focus on going down the track and you put your mind and your eyes toward the end of the curve and exiting the curve and going down the track, something magical happens. All the same material, the same equipment, the same mind, the same skills start to align toward moving down the track. And I think there's an analogy there around UX and innovation. I think we have all the tools to be innovators. We have the right skills to be innovators. Do we have the mindset to be innovators? Do we get focused internally on the details of our deliverables and our approaches and our methods, or are we thinking beyond that and looking down the track and thinking about the value we create and where we take that? And I think that's really what innovation is about, is an innovation mindset. So I kind of want to ask that as an open question to think about as we go through this. And I think we're a little bit torn in UX because we want to do the thing that users need and that they're asking for and that they want, but we also want to be thinking beyond that and thinking about where we can take people that they haven't even thought of, and how do we balance that? Now, I've talked about looking down the track and thinking about value. That's really what innovation is. This is my favorite definition of innovation because it's really simple and I think it's really true. Innovation is a creation of new value. A lot of times when people talk about innovation, they focus on the creativity and the new, and that's absolutely important. You need to do something that's creative and novel. But if you just do something that's creative and new, it's not necessarily innovation. It needs to deliver something of value, right? Otherwise, it's just, it's interesting, but it's not really innovation. And you can also do very valuable work that's not innovative, and that's important. But we live in a time when innovation is absolutely necessary. Innovation is no longer exceptional. It's not something that is done off in the R&D department somewhere, and you have the day-to-day business as usual, and there's some innovation going on somewhere. It's what we're doing all the time. And you can see it in the headlines. I mean, this is just a random set of headlines from a few different online papers at different times, but this is stuff that's going on. We live in this amazing age of innovation. People with bionic limbs control with their minds. We're printing body parts. I mean, what kind of world is this we're living in? It's amazing what we're doing, absolutely amazing. And in that world, innovation is not optional. It's something that absolutely has to be happening. We know it's not optional for business. You hear this sentiment everywhere. It's innovate or die. And Sudhindra already referred to a few of those stories. If you were in the boardroom of some of these companies a few years ago in their heyday, you would have seen the most confident set of executives. They owned the world, right? Kodak owned photography. It was synonymous. You talked about photography, you talked about Kodak. Now more people are taking photographs than ever, and Kodak is bankrupt. Blockbuster was on every street corner of every city in North America and Europe, and now gone. It would be as if tomorrow you said, there's no more McDonald's, there's no more Starbucks, that's going to happen. You can't imagine it. They were so powerful, so strong, so much in that position, and all of a sudden, gone. And they were gone not because they're lazy or stubborn or stupid, but because they did the things that made them successful. They didn't innovate around the way things were changing, and other people said, okay, this is great, there's this big model there, but there's something different that we can do. And it not only got them a seat at the table, it actually changed the game and knocked the other people out. And we're seeing that happening all the time. And it's not just in the business context, it's true in other contexts as well, social, environmental. We've become so successful as a species that we've now pushed the environment past the breaking point. And the demand for innovation is just as strong in that world as it is in the business world. We have to be innovating, we don't have a choice. And the pace of that change is accelerating. Right? It's not just that there's a lot of change, it's that there's more change today than there was yesterday, and there'll be more change tomorrow than there is today. It's constantly accelerating. Products are eating themselves at a faster rate than they ever have before. Here's just one metric for the speed of the acceleration of change. How long it takes a company to become a billion-dollar company, 100-core US dollars company. And this is just an infographic. It'll spin by too fast for you to read the details, but you can see the numbers. Traditional companies taking 25, 50, 80 years to reach that benchmark of a billion-dollar valuation. Contemporary companies leveraging digital technology, incredible speed to get to that billion-dollar valuation. Right now, or at least right when I took this screenshot a few days ago, 82 companies in Silicon Valley with a billion-dollar valuation, a few of them with 10 billion, a few others with 40 billion startups. These were all companies that were just small players. And they took a look at the big ecosystems, they said, we can do that. We can do something better there. And they all leverage digital technology to do that. That's what makes this possible. Things can scale so fast in digital. You can go from an idea in a garage to taking over an industry in that short a period of time because of how fast things scale. Which also means if you are a startup, fantastic, amazing, the world's your oyster. There's amazing things you can do there. If you're not in a startup, you can't relax because your biggest competitor you haven't even met yet. They're off in a garage somewhere coming up with something that's going to take over your world. And digital's everywhere. It's not, you can't escape it. I mean, taxi companies, if 10 years ago you said you really need to think about your digital strategy, they would have looked at you like you're crazy. Now Uber and Halo and half a dozen other companies have made the taxi business entirely digital. They completely disrupted the digital stage. Now it's no wonder in this world that the way that things are going with that we think of innovation in relation to engineering. And certainly the Silicon Valley culture is still about engineering. And that's absolutely critical. The interesting thing about user experience is how we're this interesting kind of mix of design and engineering, how we kind of bring the two things together, that you have to think about the technology, you have to think about what sits behind it, but we're also thinking from a design mindset. And anybody recognize these two guys? Hewlett and Packard, somebody said. Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. These are the guys who started Silicon Valley. A couple of engineers in the garage that they're posing in front of their building technology. That's the image that we have of kind of innovation. So much so that as recently as 2008, when these guys, founders of Airbnb, were in Silicon Valley, people didn't take them seriously. People said, well, designers can't build and run a company. Didn't want to invest in them. And that's even as recently as that. But the culture's changing, even as we talk about that. So it's now reached a point, actually, where venture capitalists will look for a designer hire in your founding group. So yes, there's going to be an engineer, there's going to be a suit, and there's going to be, you better have a designer. And actually thinking about design-led companies is becoming an important position. And there's probably more than anything, one influence that's created that, which is Apple. I'm not an Apple fanboy, but their success speaks for itself. What they've done is demonstrate the incredible power and the value of good design. And the interesting thing about it for us, I think, is it's not just design, whatever that is. It's really experience design. Here's Steve Jobs' definition of design, not just what it looks and feels like. Design is how it works. If that's not a description of experience design, then I don't know what it is. So people may not call it that, but that's absolutely what they're talking about. It's not just the products, it's the software, it's the stores, it's the service, it's everything around it. Exactly what Sujendra was talking about. It's the whole thing coming together that builds that experience design. And in fact, and again, success speaks for itself. Not just the biggest company in the world, but twice as big as the next biggest company. They could buy Uber, Tesla, Twitter, Netflix, Dropbox, Snapchat, Airbnb, SpaceX, and still have $20 billion left in the bank. And that's unbelievable success. And so much built around that core idea. Airbnb's new head of design saying, actually, design-led companies don't work. So 2 slides ago, I've got Airbnb, Brian Chesky saying, no one will pay attention to us because we were designers. Now his new head of design saying it's not about design-led companies. He's not pushing back on that. He's not throwing out designers. He's saying we need to go further. Design-led companies thinking too small. He's talking about a company where every person in the organization is an advocate of the customer. Thinking more about experience design than about design. Experience is the value. The platform is the value. These companies, these are all in the $10 billion family of those startups. Uber, biggest taxi company in the world, owns no vehicles. Facebook, biggest media owner, creates no content. Alibaba has no inventory. Airbnb, biggest accommodation provider in the world, owns no real estate. What do they own? They own an experience platform delivered by digital technology, supported by an approach. They're about the user experience. They're about the business model disruption through creating a user experience. Business press has been talking about this for a few years now, and it's become more and more. Customer experience is the new business benchmark. Traditional companies, Mercedes-Benz saying, customer experience is the new marketing. Tesla, very much about technology innovation, but also spending a lot of time focusing on innovation in customer experience, the car buying and owning experience, equally important. And here's a nice little quote again from Ford. Customer experience has rapidly moved from an idea to an ideal to an operational mandate. You have to have it. Isn't it a great time to be in user experience? Aren't you glad you chose this, this direction? Aren't you glad to be here in this elite group of people who's making the world happen? Fantastic, isn't it? Okay, but let's not pop the champagne corks just yet. Because I think there is a challenge here for us as a discipline, which is, although customer experience may be everything that everyone's talking about, it may be the most important thing that's happening in terms of business innovation and solving global problems and all those kinds of things, very much at the heart of what's happening in the world. It's not necessarily user experience as a discipline that people look to for that. So I think this sentiment is out there. People think of user experience and they often think of very low-level kind of technical details of, it's wireframes and usability and user testing and get lost in all those details and not in the vision and the capability of actually creating and inventing those experiences. I think we kind of do that to ourselves as a discipline to some extent. We're more the mechanics of the Wright brothers plane than the inventors of it in some ways. And so I think, we've got this kind of situation for ourselves. And some of it is about what can we do as individuals. I'm not worried about what we do as the discipline because I don't really care so much about disciplines. But what do we do as individuals to be innovation leaders? Right? What do we need in order to do that? And I'd argue, going back to the motorcycle analogy, it's one thing, it's focus. It's where do we put our attention? It's how do we think about the things that we do. There are probably some new tools, and I'll talk a little bit about that, some different ways of thinking about things that we don't necessarily do, but a lot of it's just about where we place our focus. So if you look at those billion-dollar startups, where do they place their focus? There's really a couple of things that they're focused on all the time. They're focused on value, and they're focused on product. They're thinking about opportunity, they're looking for customer needs that are unmet, they're looking for unused resources that they can do something with, technology capabilities, data, unused resources of various sorts. They're always thinking about value and thinking about opportunity. And the other thing they're thinking about is product. They're thinking about execution. How do I get something out there quickly that I can learn something from, and that I can build on, and that I can grow from? You look at the history of all those, of any one of those companies, grab one at random, you're almost always going to find that story. They got excited about technology, they said, what can I do with this? Let's find a user need that it meets. Or they got excited about a problem that people had, and they said, what can we do, taking things that are out there and build on that to do something about it? And they said, how quickly can we get something out there and work with it? So it's that innovation mindset. Think value, think product, and I think so for us as UX practitioners, think bigger than what we may normally think of as UX. So I want to kind of go through each of these a little bit. So yeah, think value. I've already said, if innovation is a creation of new value, then the thing that we are making is the value. What do we know about the value of the things that we're making? So one of the things to kind of step back on that, I think this is one of the areas where we're not particularly good as UX designers. Most designers are not very good at business, right? It's not what we often the reason that people become designers is because they said, I don't like all that number stuff, so I'm going to go and do something that's more, I draw really nicely. I think in pictures. I have this creative spirit. I don't want to see a spreadsheet. But if we do that, we've knocked ourselves right out of the picture of innovation in a way. And it's not super complicated. So this is a business model diagram. I know you can't read the details of it. It's a business model canvas. How many of you are familiar with this little tool? Oh, that's nice. Okay, quite a few people. But quite a few people not raising their hand. But I'm glad to see that, and I see it more and more. This is a really simple tool that I think everyone should